Thanks for joining me today for this edition of the Author's Corner, brought to you by KNEO 91.7 FM, The Word. I'm Roberta Foster, and today I'm talking with Elizabeth Camden, and we sure welcome her to Author's Corner. She is the author of the book Beyond the Clouds, which is published by Bethany House, a division of Baker Publishing Group. She'll tell you more about where to find the book when we get towards the end of the program. But a little bit about Elizabeth. She's best known for her historical novels set in Gilded Age America, featuring clever heroines and richly layered storylines. Before she was a writer, she was an academic librarian at some of the largest and smallest libraries in America, but her favorite is the continually growing library in her own home. And she'll tell you more about her website and all that as we get to the end of the program. Elizabeth, welcome to Author's Corner.
Thank you for inviting me aboard. I'm really looking forward to this.
Well, the book title is Beyond the Clouds. It's part of the Women of Midtown series. So is this book one of your series or a continuation in the series?
It's actually the final book in the trilogy, but you don't have to read the other books. These books are very loosely related, just by women who come from the same part of New York. So this one, you will not be lost, and it has a satisfying beginning and ending. And it's set, a lot of this trilogy deals with World War I.
Okay.
And so this book brings us to the end of the war. And so it's a really uplifting novel that hopefully will teach you a lot about some of the lesser-known facts of World War I.
Okay, so what part of Europe did World War I primarily take place in that this book is a part of? Okay,
so this book, the first half is set in New York City, but the last half is all in Belgium.
Okay.
And it's about two Americans who go overseas as part of a volunteer unit to help out in Belgium. And in order to make sense, I need to tell you just a little bit about what was going on with Belgium during World War I, because they were not part of the war, technically. They just had the very bad luck to be located in between Germany and France.
Uh-huh.
And they tried to stay neutral. They wanted nothing to do with this war. But when Germany declared war on France, they rolled right over Belgium on their way to the Western Front. And the Germans occupied Belgium for the entire 4 years of the war. At that point, Belgium was the most industrialized country in Europe, really, even maybe the world. They had steel factories, and they built engines and railroads and pharmaceuticals, but they didn't have a whole lot of farmland. So they depended on imported food. Now, what happened as soon as they were occupied was imports were cut off.
Mm-hmm.
And so overnight, you had 9 million Belgians who were facing starvation. And there was a very little-known group called the Commission for the Relief of Belgium. It was an American group that organized relief efforts to send food to Belgium. When it started, when this volunteer organization started, the United States was not part of the war. That didn't happen for years later. So this relief organization was very well established, and my novel is about two of these volunteers who head overseas to help. They're going into dangerous territory. Even though Belgium had never declared war, it was not an easy place to be. And so it is part historical novel, it's part love story, and it, despite the somewhat serious topic, I hope that readers will really find a lot of joy and inspiration in this novel of this very unique organization called Commission for the Relief of Belgium.
So one of the story themes is duty versus personal desire. she'll share with us how your main characters wrestle with this conflict.
Well, they are opposites. The two characters. It's a man and a woman. The man is a very reckless, daring-do guy who has always wanted to be a hero. And so as soon as the war starts, he heads over to Europe to volunteer to be a pilot. Delia, the heroine, is the complete opposite. She's never left New York City. She is very hardworking, very intelligent, and she is volunteering for this relief organization from the United States, doing paralegal and secretarial and clerical support.
Okay.
She's a strong person, but she is timid. She's a safety-first girl. However, when circumstances change and it is requested that she go overseas, she does not want to. Everything in her is saying, stay home, stay safe.
Mm-hmm.
But she knows what the right thing is to do. She knows she has unique skills, that she can be trusted. She knows this organization from the ground up, and that she is the right person to go. And so that's one of the ways I wrestle. I have this character play out the wrestling that we can all feel when we know what we should do, even if we would rather play it safe.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that's kind of leads into just the spiritual aspect of a lot of times the Lord asks us to do things we're not comfortable with, and yet that wrestling usually ends up with the realization that, as the phrase goes, whatever he calls you to, he'll equip you for.
I love that. Yes, absolutely. One of the themes that I have woven into the book is that God does not expect us to be perfect, but when you engage with the world, if you have a full life, whether your life means raising a family or doing volunteer work or supporting yourself, being single. I mean, I was single until I was 35. Okay. And so I have a lot of experience in a solo life. And I still felt called to share what I had to offer in my own unique ways. Uh-huh. So, yes, we are, God doesn't expect us all to be these wonderfully heroic characters. In fact, in this novel, characters are very ordinary. They are strong and courageous, and I hope the reader will find that I give them great sparkling dialogue and charisma, but they're not movie stars. They're not kings or senators. They're ordinary people who have been called to do something heroic, and they rise to the occasion. And, if you look around the world, don't we see that every day? Every day, whether it is people who are tending to their parents or volunteering at a hospital, at the soup kitchen, what have you. That is everyday heroism. And it's all around us.
Amen. Well, today I am talking with Elizabeth Camden regarding her novel Beyond the Clouds, which is published by Bethany House, a division of Baker Publishing Group. And you're listening to Author's Corner, and I'm Roberta Foster. Well, World War I and World War II books have been very popular in fiction, especially in romantic fiction. And Belgium is a location that has been written about in different books that I've actually interviewed about. So it's kind of cool to hear you talk about it from your side of being the author. And so why do you think these war situations just lend themselves to romantic situations?
Well, World War I and World War II, you cannot have higher stakes. And everything feels more intense. The world is literally falling apart. And so those wars make for this epic backdrop. And it makes everything feel more urgent and more important. But, the other thing is that wars throw people together in crazy ways. And this is what I was talking about, how everyday heroes, you have unique opportunities to join in and try to find some joy amid the chaos, try to soothe, oil across troubled water. But, quite frankly, I really enjoy those novels or movies, Band of Brothers or Pearl Harbor, those kind of stories. I love them because they're distant enough for me to not take it quite so personally. I don't really enjoy reading novels about current wars in the Middle East. I just don't want that. So I think that with World War I and World War II, there's a certain amount of escapism in them. And those wars are far enough away from us to feel like history, and yet it's still familiar because we have photographs and pictures and stories. We all have some grounding in those two wars. So I do think that that's part of the reason they have been so popular with readers.
Well, you have already mentioned that your two main characters are quite different. And yet they find common ground in wanting to be useful. But how are their differences? How do they come to resolve their different personalities in a Christ-like way?
Okay. Well, one of the big themes in the novel is forgiveness. The novel starts with a bang. I mean, you are thrown right into the war in 1918, I think. It's nearing the end of the war. But these two characters have a past. They were childhood sweethearts 12 years before the novel opens. And so they fell madly in love when they were teenagers. But it didn't last because they were young and stupid, as many teenagers are, and they made so many mistakes that, and you see glimpses of their past as the novel unfolds. You realize how these two people at the age of 14 to 16 and 17, when they were in love, how they weren't equipped to be in love or to establish a long-term relationship, especially since they were different. They were so different. The guy is a popular, outgoing guy, and the woman is withdrawn and sort of introverted. When the novel opens 12 years later, they're older and wiser, and they need to learn to forgive, because some of the things that happened when they were teenagers were truly bad. And some of the things they do in the course of the novel aren't great either. So forgiveness is so important in life. We are charged to forgive, and forgiveness is quite a skill. Sometimes you can forgive, but you don't want anything to do with that person. You just sort of say, okay, I'm going to let this go. No need to let this grief hang on to me, but I also don't want to see you again. Finn and Delia, the two main characters, do learn to accept the flaws in each other because they know they are not perfect. God doesn't make none of us are perfect.
Right.
And so going through life, your life is going to be easier if you can try to learn to see things from the other person's point of view. And even if you don't approve of it or condone it, if you can understand it and learn to work through your problems. So I hope I demonstrate that in the course of this novel.
Well, that's the thing I like about novels, is because the author can teach so much in the written word in a way that is gentler and easier to take from the Holy Spirit. Well, Elizabeth, what sounds like a great book, and so tell our listeners what you're working on next and how they can find out more information about this and the other books that you've written.
Well, I've recently signed a contract for another trilogy, and this one will be, I'm actually going to go back in time and do a trilogy about the U.S. Navy during a very consequential time under Theodore Roosevelt's administration. He really took a third-rate Navy and turned it into a first-rate Navy. And so I'm going to do a family trilogy about the Navy. But But for now, anyone who wants to find out more about this current trilogy, the World War I trilogy, it's technically called The Women of Midtown. You can find it anywhere, Amazon, Barnes & Noble. You can always go direct to the publisher, which is Baker House Publishing. And then I'm online everywhere, Facebook, Instagram, ElizabethCamden.com.
Okay, so today I've been talking with Elizabeth Camden about her book, Beyond the Clouds, and as she's mentioned, it's published by Bethany House, a division of Baker Publishing Group, and we sure appreciate them sending us a copy of the book. Elizabeth, it's been a real pleasure chatting with you today. Thank you so much for your time.
Well, thank you for having me aboard. This was a real joy.
And to our listeners, if you'd like to hear this interview again or share it with someone else, you can find it on your favorite podcast platform or go through kneo.org. Thank you so much for tuning in. This is Roberta Foster on the Author's Corner. Join me again next time.